Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping here at the Hollywood Museum in the historic Max Factor building on Highland Avenue. And our guests are Janet Roston and filmmaker Shana Betz. Award-winning choreographer, director, Janet Roston was born in Los Angeles and earned her BA and MA at UCLA. Janet's work has been seen on stages in London, Cannes, Boston, Hollywood, and places in between, as well as on TV and film. Did you start as a choreographer?
Yeah, I think I was always interested in being a choreographer. Even though I studied dance, I didn't really like being in front, being on stage.
Did you ever act?
I didn't act.
Never acted?
No.
So from the time you were in, where'd you go to high school?
Went to Inglewood High.
So from the time you were in Inglewood High?
Yeah.
You were dancing?
I was dancing, I was folk dancing, and then I started doing some choreography with folk dance, and I said,
really?
I'm good at this, and
well, why did you
do
do folk dancing? Was there an ethnic community?
I did Jewish Israeli folk dancing.
Was it?
Yeah. It was a huge scene when I was in high school.
I remember that, yeah.
That you could go out dancing any night of the week.
And then you just started learning the steps, or did
you just, I mean, I was always good at visually picking up, so I just picked up the steps, and then I got into a folk dance company, and then I started doing choreography, and then from there, I went into study dance.
And then you had a big break that took you into directing, which is totally different, isn't it?
Well, I think I felt like with choreography that I was always interested in the dramatic representation and movement, especially for choreography for theater, and so it just became the next step to say, well, if I'm already setting up a dramatic premise in movement, I'll set up the dramatic premise in the entire piece.
But I think this is what happens. Directors always have to call in a choreographer to make sure their actors are moving back and forth on the stage. You don't have to do that.
Right. I see it all in my head. The whole thing is just one giant picture for me.
So they hire you as a director.
I do direct. Right. I get hired as a director choreographer.
I see.
And sometimes I get hired as choreographer, which I also like to do. It's a different mindset. When you're a choreographer, you're trying to get inside the head of the director that you're working for and deliver for them. So it's, and then the weight of the entire production is not on your shoulders, so it's a different feeling.
Do you like that?
Both.
And then what about, you've done music videos and you've done commercials. How do those differ from stage work that you've done?
Well, in commercials for sure, you're looking for the really fast movement bite, something that just, it's so quick each shot, so you have to load each shot with every second is going to matter. So what you put in there is really important, whereas with theater, you're looking for a big overall sweep.
But when you're doing a commercial and you say you're looking for that bite, can't they edit it in? Can't they edit what you're doing?
No, they want really specific.
They do?
Yeah, they want a very specific, this has to happen in these 3 seconds.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's just, not
right. You have
clip editing.
No, music video is different, but for commercial, they really shoot very specific.
And do you do a lot of commercials still?
I do some commercials. I mean, I've really moved a lot more into theater at this point, directing and choreography and choreography.
And you've been all over the world, directing and choreography. How do they find you, and how do you get to those places?
I did a lot of work in England. I have a really good friend who's a choreographer there, and so I just made inroads in there.
And when you do it, when you do the choreography, do you demonstrate?
Yeah, of course.
You do. You can do it.
I can still do it.
No, because I remember my ballet teacher used to sit and she'd go bump, like this from her chair and tell you what to do and go like this.
I have a teacher like that too. I haven't hit that point yet. No, so I can still do it. I can still do it.
One of the interesting things on stage is you worked with John DeFusco in Tracers.
A lot. Do you know John?
Well, he's been on the show, and he is fantastic.
He is.
Tell us about those things.
Well, he just did another production of Tracers.
Yes.
And I came in and worked on that too. I've worked with John on maybe 4 or 5 productions of Tracers, and then he wrote a play about his life called Walking Through the Fire, and I directed that.
Yeah, Walking Through the Fire, right.
Right, at the Hayworth. I co-directed that with Sheree Adams.
So you did direct that. On Tracers, did you direct it or choreograph
No, I was the
it?
choreographer on that.
So how does somebody like that, tell us the story about that.
Of how he...
Tracers.
Of Tracers.
Because it's very heavy.
It's such a beautiful piece, though, about the Vietnam War and Vietnam War vets. I mean, it's probably it's the first piece that addressed the issues of the Vietnam vet.
Right, and coming home.
Exactly,
and the
and coming
problems
home and all of that.
Right.
And he just did this new production that was with current vets from Afghanistan.
I know. He had them on with him, right? Or they were
Right,
acting with him.
They were
they were the
actors.
I know.
He directed it, and that was really fun because I came in and he has an association with John Densmore from The Doors, and so there's a drumming section in it, and so I got to work with John Densmore, which was very exciting.
So you did. How would somebody? Well, they were actors, right? The vets were actors. Because I was going to say, how do you work with someone who hasn't had experience? But they were experienced.
No, I mean, actors have a sense of movement, and I really feel like I can get almost anybody to move.
Oh, that's good.
I've worked with lots of different, dancers and kids training to dance, and I'm a big believer that really if you give people time and security, they can
do it.
They can.
Another thing that you did was this Bollywood artist, Sammy Chan.
Yeah, I did.
How does that, what was that? Was it watered down Indian or
No, I've done several things for him where I've worked with Indian dancers. I've done a lot of work where I work with ethnic dancers and then develop from that. So I did a stage show for him, which was with Bollywood dancers, classical Bharatanatyam.
Oh, you did a stage show with
It was
him.
a performance, but then I also did a music video.
That's what I thought.
In the music video, actually, it was set in a high school. And it was all contemporary dance, and we used the music, but it was all this kind of story in a high school. It's really cute.
Did you go on location?
To India?
No, in the high school.
Yeah, we went into a high school. Yeah.
Or did you go to India?
I have been to India, but not for Sammy Chan.
But in keeping with that, with Sammy Chan, you worked on something called the Tanjore Project.
Right. Well, that's how they found me. Because,
tell me what that is.
I did, sometimes I do I do contemporary choreography, its own pieces for concert work, what I would say for dance concert work. And so that was a piece that was,
but it's Indian, right?
Well, it integrated hip-hop, contemporary jazz, and Indian into a piece. And then they saw that piece. It got presented in several festivals, including this festival that they had at the time called Art Wala, which was contemporary Indian, so someone got us a connection to that. Then they saw that, then they said, oh, we love that piece. And then that's how I met up with them.
I wondered how a choreographer really gets all of the work, because it's a lot of word of mouth, right? Or seeing a product, or seeing what you've done.
I have a manager as well.
Yes,
Victoria
but still,
Morris, yeah.
But still, you talked about contemporary, and at the Rubicon you did Footloose.
Right.
Which is great. But
that was so fun.
But Footloose has been on the stage for years. What do? Do you see it? Do you not see it? How do you get into changing the choreography?
Right. Well, I think a good example of that is I did The Color Purple at Celebration Theater, and that was I was the choreographer on that project. And in that case, I didn't see the Broadway production.
But that had been on Broadway too, right?
But I didn't see it. You couldn't see it. There was no way to see it.
But why don't they use the same choreography that's there? That
well,
comes
in our
from Broadway?
case, we did it at Celebration Theater. It was a reimagining and a reworking in a very small space.
Because it is a small stage.
Right, but it was a reimagining of the work anyway. I mean, on Broadway they did it with 35 actors. We did it with like 17. So it was taking the story into a very intimate space.
But the same thing at the Rubicon. Footloose was on.
I mean, I mean, you're going to the source. So if you're doing Footloose, you're talking about 80s choreography. So you're looking at a lot of 80s dance.
Yes.
So I'm a big researcher. So you're looking at what that was. How did they dance then? Also, there's a kind of country feel to it, because he goes into, he moves from the big city out into a really country area. So I was using that as a source as well. And for The Color Purple, I was sourcing, dance from that period.
Do you have anything to do with the costuming? Because you said he goes from the big city to the country, and it turns out to be a different kind of costuming.
Right. When I direct and choreograph, I pretty much costume my own work.
Oh,
If
you
I
do?
And if I do contemporary choreography, that's a dance piece, I costume my own piece.
Well,
if I'm the choreographer, then that's the director's vision. Yeah.
We've talked about all these things that have already been on before that we've seen. Now you're working on a new show called Tonya and Nancy, which is produced by Paul Bogosian, an
Right.
old friend of mine
That's so
from
nice.
Boston.
That's so great.
I know, and he has, what is it, Harborside Productions?
Harborside Films.
Harborside Films. And he is so enthusiastic. He's done so many great plays, and I'm looking forward to seeing Tonya and Tanya.
It's Tonya and Nancy, the rock opera.
Tanya and Nancy. I said Tonya, but
Right.
it's Tanya, right?
Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan.
That's right.
Exactly.
Tell us about it.
So we did a production, and how you know Paul's, we did the production in Boston at American Repertory Theater's Club Oberon, which is like a nightclub that they have where you can do, we did sort of a show where it happened all around you and the actors were all over you.
And did you do that?
Yeah. I was the director and choreographer on that. And now what we're doing in Los Angeles is, because we're coming to the 20th anniversary of the infamous knee hit of Tanya and Nancy, and then also their meeting at the 1994 Winter Olympics in Lillehammer, Norway.
During the Olympic time. But tell us the story, because it was so long ago, really. 20 years? I can't believe it.
Yeah, 20 years.
It's shocking.
It's gotten a
that it was
lot
so
of media
long.
attention right now. I mean, it was that they were big competitors, and there was skating, right? Figure skaters, very competitive. Tanya was the sort of little athletic spark plug, and Nancy Kerrigan was very tall and elegant and refined, and they were competing for many years. And then there was there was a knee hit that happened.
But why did that knee hit happen? Because of some scoring, right?
Well, no, it was just, I think that, they never proved if Tanya knew anything about it, and I really don't know if that's true, but that her boyfriend, Jeff Gillooly, set up this knee hit so that to get Tanya out of the competition, to get Nancy out of the competition so that Tanya had a chance to win. But the knee hit was kind of bungled, and it didn't really do that much damage, and so Nancy was able to go to the Olympics after all.
So how did you research that?
Well, that piece is written by, the librettist is Elizabeth Searle, and the composer is Michael Tioli. So I came
Michael
on
Tioli, tell us about the music. What kind of music is it?
Oh, it's so fabulous. It's big prog rock score. It's like a big rock, full-on rock music, and then soaring, almost operatic vocals on top. The way like Yes, Genesis, any of these bands that had like big vocals. So it has that feel to it. It's really fun.
But what about the music? Do they have several pieces there?
We're going to have a five-piece band.
Oh, you do?
Five-piece band, everybody in head mics. It's going to be a step away from what would be a full production. We're not calling it a full production because it's not going to have as much choreography and staging, but it will have some.
But it will, and it will come to a theater near you.
Yeah, we're hoping in 2014.
Do you think it'll be a film?
Oh, I don't know. It'd be a great film.
Do you ever think about that when you're doing stage plays?
I mean,
it would make a good film?
It would be such a good film. It's such an operatic story. It's crazy, stranger than fiction.
Or does it go with this kind of music from here to Broadway or to bigger or on tour?
I think it would be a great off-Broadway piece. I think it would be a great touring piece.
That's
because
what it sounds like.
It's so much fun. The audience loves it. It's such a nutty story.
What about the casting? Do you have anything to do with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have great casting. We have really strong performers for this one.
Same
and also
people
in Boston.
from Boston?
Well, they're in Boston, so no.
So you didn't bring them?
I wish.
So
I love them.
Is that right?
They know I love them.
Oh, so you picked them.
But yes, they were great in Boston, and we have a new cast here that's really strong. Our Tanya and Nancy are fabulous.
And the musical conductor, will he be here? Was he in both places?
Right, Michael Tioli. He'll be doing both.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you came to talk to us about it.
Thank you so much.
It was great, and we'll look for Tanya and Nancy. It was a wonderful story.
It's
they were like black and white. They were like odd and
they say polar opposites.
Even odd and even.
Exactly.
So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with filmmaker Shana Betz. Hi, it's Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're here at the Hollywood Museum, and I'm with Shana Betz. actress, model, filmmaker, who was raised in the Midwest, went to Kent State and Akron University, where she studied biology and neuroscience. We have to find out about that. She dropped out to pursue an acting career, and she was the executive director for MV.
PA was the Music Video Production Association.
So how did you get involved with that?
You know, I was acting at the time. I'm no longer, by the way, I can scratch out actress and model off that slash of that list. Please don't tell anyone these
filmmaker
things. is
enough? But you were a model. Look at you.
I was a model. I was doing a lot of, but regional type things, smaller. I came out of Ohio, so it was a lot of catalog work and things like that.
But it opened doors for you, didn't it?
Of course, I became very, very comfortable in front of a camera, and that's how it parlayed into the acting side of things. I had been modeling since I was 13 and had worked in that realm. So.
And why were you modeling since you were 13? They just saw you and thought you were great?
You know, my mother was always one to push me out to try new things, and I was tall. It never occurred to me that I was good looking. It was just that I was tall.
Yeah.
That's all it took. It was that tall and thin, and you could model. So I ended up doing some work, catalogs and things like that, and then I visited a friend after working through high school and college, making money that way. I ended up visiting a friend in Los Angeles on a film set and realized that I wanted to be an actor, which
Oh, you did?
about
So then did
killed my mother.
Why? Because that was out in front of the camera too.
I know, but my whole family positioned me as a doctor. They all thought I was going to be a doctor because no one had gone to college in my entire family at that point. And I'm talking about myself or my extended family.
Were you an only child?
I have a sister.
You have a sister, so did they think she should be a doctor?
No. In fact, that's part of what the film was about. That I ended up writing is a love letter to my sister because my mother was a drug runner in the 70s. So what happened was, she's 8 years older than myself and really took care of us.
Your sister
my
did?
My sister did. So she took the brunt of her life. So she had to be
Did
the
she
grown-up.
take care of your mother too, in a way?
She did, but it wasn't not as much as she took care of me.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Did you take acting lessons then when you came to Hollywood?
I did. I ended up taking a lot of. You know what? I didn't go to Hollywood first. My friend in Hollywood said, "Don't come to Hollywood. Go to New York and get your training." So I ended up going to New York, and oddly enough, I did the worst D-level movies you've ever seen in your life.
But you did movies from New York, not stage.
Yeah. Oh no stage. I mean, I did some readings.
Amazing.
I did exactly.
Right.
It was. I just got in
Amazing.
with the weirdest group and a bunch of B movies, and then I say B meaning D, and then came after I was there for a while, and I did all these really bad films. I realized that was not the place that I should be. That I needed training.
It's good that you realized that.
Yeah.
Realized from one career move to another.
Yes. Yeah.
And after you did all this, is that when you went into being the executive director at the...
Yeah, so when I was here, I ended up doing some just side jobs for my friend who was running. She was the executive director of this trade association. It represented all of music video production at the time, which was huge.
What, is it
huge
still in?
It's still in existence, but it's much smaller. Music videos have diminished to almost nothing right now as far as their budgets. But it used in the heyday when I was the executive
And
director.
so what did they do? They would come through your organization, or would you do the music videos?
The trade association in that capacity represented all of the production companies that did music videos. So what we would negotiate in contracts.
Like
it was like
a
a
union,
except it's a trade association.
I see.
It's governed by different rules.
So
and
then
things.
you had to know statistics and things.
Oh yeah, I was always good at selling. So
so that was good.
I was always good at selling. So I ended up taking over her position when she left the company and built it, and then shared that position with a business partner of mine that was good at all the things that I wasn't good at.
Did you do any projects? You were... Those people were in festivals. You did small festivals.
Yeah, I did shorts. I was still acting at the time. I started producing short pieces that I wanted to be involved in. Through that, I learned how to make something look really good for very little. It was music video, and so remember, out of that time period, Spike Jones, Mike Mills, a bevy of directors that are incredible, that are out there now. And what was happening is that the budgets were shrinking, but everyone wanted to look like
Right.
$1 million video. Everyone wanted to look like Michael Jackson's $1 million video, but they only
Right.
had $20,000, and that's how it began to shrink that quickly.
But that's what you learned when
I
you
learned
made
that, yeah.
your film on a very small budget. We're going to get into that, but
And then I also learned that from working in theater. I've paired with a theater company out here. I found my home finally.
the Actors Gang.
The Actors Gang.
And was it in Culver City when you were
No,
with
it was actually right down here next to the trannies on Vine in Santa Monica.
Oh, it was, because
Yeah.
it's in a wonderful place
It's a
now
beautiful spot.
in Culver
We're
City.
very lucky. We are very lucky. The city.
Are you still
has-
part of the group?
Of course. I'm a lifelong member is the way it works. I'm not actively back there right now because I've been working on a couple of films.
But I think that building is great, and
it's
the
an amazing
whole
building.
area,
Just the history of it.
isn't it?
And the theater company itself has been around for 30 years. And what happened when I joined that company, it's a process. You have to audition. It's a very long, tedious kind of process. But once I got in, I found a home, and I also found Tim Robbins is the artistic director, and I was able to learn so much from the directors that he brought in, world-class directors. He of course is also a world-class director, but just
And were
other
they
theater
directing
directors.
you, or were
Yes,
you just watching
yeah.
them?
Oh, no,
So
I was
you
directing,
partnered
exactly.
with him to be in a lot of
Yeah.
festivals.
No, I partnered with him to produce his festival.
Oh, to produce
Yes.
this festival.
Yeah, see,
so we're
because I
back
came out of the
down.
producing. See, I came out of the producing side, so acting.
We're down to the
actors-
paperwork.
It always comes back to being able to galvanize people to work, and be able
Yeah.
to organize, and,
Yeah.
and I think that helped me a ton when it came to putting together my film. But the producing side of it, I really enjoy producing
Oh, so
theater
you-
and live events. I produced, for that series, I produced concerts with Jackson Browne, Tenacious D. I did a speaking series with Gore Vidal when he was alive. I loved him.
That
just
was
a,
out of
you
out of the Actors Gang
Yeah.
group. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's a series that I produced for him. It was like a performing arts series for 2.5 months, 5 days a week of
Oh,
programming that
wow.
I did. A different
Oh,
programming
wow.
every single week.
Oh, I know how hard that is.
Yeah, it was different. Yes, I know you do. I know. Look at this. I don't need a break.
I know that, but the other thing is like, they're not coming, they're canceling, you're filling in the space.
Oh, yes.
I
Yes,
bet you
it's
did a
very
lot
quick.
of that.
Yes,
right?
and you learn to do things. You really learn to work on a shoestring budget. You learn how to think on the
Right.
fly. Theater allowed me to change it very quickly and learn how to take, when you lose a location, for example, in a film, I know there's a lot of people that melt down.
Right.
Because I've seen it. But what I learned from theater is to take the essence of what the scene is about and then figure out where else we can do that.
How to flip it.
that flips that makes that still fulfills the same need emotionally that we need from the characters and the points, the story points.
You probably learned that too when you toured with 1984.
Oh, yeah.
Because were you the only woman?
I was the only female in that. Yes, yes. It was a touring cast. We did a run here, which I shared the role with another girl here, and then we then went out and toured, and they toured the world with it. It's an incredible piece. Yeah.
So that moves on to.
Played Julia in
Oh.
Orwell's 1984.
That's fantastic.
By the way, you must know that when I got that role, there are certain milestones in one's life, in creative
and
creative
was
life.
it like a step?
It was a step because the book 1984 had split my brain open when I was in 6th grade, and
Oh,
from
me
that
too.
point
I
on,
loved it
I just
too.
loved it so
Right.
much, and then I got the role of Julia, and I couldn't. It was like heaven.
That's
and directed
great.
by Tim Robbins.
Besides.
Besides that, so I was just in heaven for a while.
And then you decide to take your heaven to make your own film.
I had a moment where I walked on the stage. I think it was in Nebraska or something like that, and we had a sold-out show. It was 3,000 people, and it was an
Is
incredible.
that for this play?
For 1984. Oh yeah, it was an amazing show. And we ended up. I walked out on stage, and when I walked off the stage, I realized that it wasn't enough.
Oh, wow.
It was a really odd feeling to know that even at the penultimate of sort of what one could ask for as an
Yeah.
actress, to be connected to that many people at one time,
Really?
and really feel that high, it just still wasn't enough.
But with the film, you reach more people, right?
With the film, I reached more people.
You reach more. And tell us how Free Ride came about. Or were there some films before that? You did short, you did commercials, right?
Yes, I'd done a couple of commercials, short format type things, and then I got a grant to do a project called the Girls Project, and that's a project that a mutual friend of ours, Cheryl, is now working on a new generation of that. But what the idea is that they gave a grant to 8 different
Oh,
directors,
I see.
and what they did is said the parameters are it has to be written, directed, produced, cut, and shot by women, and it has to be around. And here's your money, and there was no parameters other than that. And I love the challenge, and I started writing.
I was going to say, what was the challenge? So you started writing.
Well, the
But
challenge
you
is
got-
I've never worked with a female DP. You know, they're as rare as
But
female
what do you
directors.
say now
It's impossible.
about working and making films with women?
I can honestly say without a hesitation that women work harder than anyone.
And to hire them for your...
I hire them all the time. I hired them every single position of my film was at the head department head was a woman. Now, that was not on purpose. I enjoy
Just got
men.
the
I love
best.
them. They were drawn to the project, and they were willing to work harder and longer. I tend to find that
I think
women
that's great.
have as Ariana Huffington wrote in her book, she said, you know, women have more to prove. And I think because when we
Take
fail,
one
we don't
step
just fail.
further.
We don't just
Right.
fail for ourselves. We fail on behalf of women. People look at it and they say, "Well, she failed because she's a woman, not because it's just Shana."
Oh, I know.
So
I know.
it becomes
It's
this
so
thing.
not fair.
So I think that they work harder and they just refuse to fall down. And
I
I
know
love
that was one of the things that when I was reading your bio, you said always hire women for your productions. Well, tell us about the story before we have to go.
Okay, so well, my mother, like I mentioned,
autobiographical.
It's autobiographical. It's based on my life story. My mother was a drug runner in the '70s. She ended up getting busted. It's Florida. It's a really buoyant film. It's not a boohoo sad film. I wrote it as a love letter to my sister because I come from Akron, Ohio. A lot of people where I'm from have a difficult time emoting and having outward emotions. They're not very verbal. And what I know is that when we'd go to movies, that people would laugh their butts off and cry and do all this, but outside of there, they wouldn't cry at someone's funeral. And knowing that, I wanted to give my sister something that she could watch herself in her own story and be able to feel what I believed she should have felt the first time around. And,
Is she still in Akron?
She's actually in West Virginia. She's a truck driver. And I have a new series that I'm developing about 2 sisters that are truck drivers.
Oh, that's good. So we've answered the last question. What are you doing next?
Yeah, it's a series of...
But was your mother okay? Was she a druggie too?
She was. She ended up, she had a very bad drug habit, and she was an alcoholic. But she came out of prison, found God, kind of fell off the wagon again, but we have a great relationship.
Did? Oh, you did? And
We have
she
a
didn't
terrific
mind that you're
relationship.
writing this?
No, she's very proud of me. In fact,
good.
everybody in my family is proud of me.
And how did you cast it? Tell us about the casting.
The casting, I ended up going to Steve Moyer. So Anna Paquin plays my mother, and Steve Moyer, also from True Blood, is a producer on the project. And the way that went about is I ended up getting the project to Steve to play the boss man who gets my mother into the business. But in the interview, when we were talking about stuff, he said, "I'm probably talking myself out of a role, but has Anna read the script?" And I said, "You know what? She hasn't, because we haven't been able to get it to her because of her reps and the budget and all these things." So he said, "If you wouldn't mind, I would love to be able to try to hand this over." And I said, "Absolutely." So
it's all who you know, right?
It is.
And how
really
you
is.
do it.
And the material. I think that the material draws.
It sold itself. But it's the idea of getting it to someone. You have Drea Matteo.
Yeah, Drea DiMatteo was in it. She also was an incredible, amazing actress. I love her. She's become a good friend of mine, and she's just such a...
And it was on a very, very low budget.
Everyone had to come in and know that there were no frills, and everybody did. I mean, we're talking about no frills means no frills. And when you say that, people know what low budget is. You don't know what low budget is until you do a budget of this size.
You're hands-on,
I'm very hands-on.
Very hands-on. And I'm so glad you came and told us all about it today. Thank you,
Thank you for
Shana.
having me.
Thank you, Shana. And thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep writing to my email, jaquinn1@aol.com. See you next time.